Hello everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. Today we have some pro-revenge stories and our first story of the day is by Mercury For Real. I recruited an unwitting army to annoy an a-hole. Back in the early 90s, my friend, I'll call him Lou because that's his name, was selling his RX-7 via an ad in the old print Auto Trader. It came out every Thursday, so that first weekend was critical for sales. The very first guy that came to see it on Saturday said he wanted to buy after driving it. Of course, he had to finance, so they couldn't finish the sale during the weekend. Lou was worried about losing all the bites from the new ad, so he asked for a deposit of $500. The guy wrote a check. Lou told the rest of the callers that weekend that it was sold and, unfortunately, didn't ask for their numbers in case it fell through. This story predates caller ID availability in my area by a couple years, so those leads were gone. As you surely expect by now, the guy flakes on Monday and Lou deposits the check. Payment stopped. Big surprise. Sitting around my apartment, we schemed revenge, but all we had to go on was the check. Lucky for karma, there was a phone number printed on it. Our first idea was to write a little program to dial his number repeatedly from my modem, but that would be easily stopped and probably get us in direct trouble. Then Lou got a page from his work. This was back in the one-way pager days. You call the pager's dedicated phone number, it sounds a tone, then you punch digits for the number you want to be sent to the pager. The person with the pager receives the number you entered, and presumably calls it. Everyone with a pager made sure that people who needed to get a hold of them had the number for their pager. You'd see pager numbers in print and TV ads all the time for various services. Boom! Angelic choir sings, heavenly light goes off. Blue's pager number and my pager number had the same prefix, middle 3 digits. What if we randomly dial numbers with that prefix and page them all to this guy's number? So we order a pizza, open some beers, and start looking through the yellow pages at locksmiths and tow truck services to find more pager prefixes. We wind up with a dozen or so. After that, it's half an hour of coding in ye old Borland C++. I put together a program that would cycle through our list of known prefixes and add a random final 4 digits to get a random pager. It calls the pager's number, pauses, then dials this a-hole's number and throws a *911 suffix on there for good measure, which is something people with pagers understood to indicate an emergency of some kind. The whole thing was just generating a string like ATDT602XY, a-hole number, *911#, where X is the pager prefix and Y is random. Commas make pauses, since you need to connect to the paging service before you can enter the message. Make string, send to modem, wait for no carrier, hang up, repeat. We start eating the pizza and let it fly. I was very picky about my devices, so my modem was a US Robotics Courier. You could set an S register to control how long it would sound each tone when dialing. Uber nerds like myself would keep tinkering with that to get it as fast as possible while still being recognized by the phone service. It was very fast. I swear it could run through 4 pages per minute, so this guy would get 240 calls an hour. We just watched it run and laughed our butts off. We realized pretty early on that we didn't really know if it was working, so we wandered down to the 7-Eleven and called them from a payphone, just in case you could somehow trace it or the popo were on the case and watching. A man answered and I said, "Hello, I got a page at this number?" I heard an audible sigh and then he just hung up. Gold! We ended up running it for a few hours, then let it go quiet for a few days. Then we scheduled it to start dialing in the middle of the night every few days. Plus we'd fire it up by hand randomly whenever we had a party. We checked again from the 7-Eleven after a week and it went to an answering machine, which did the rapid tone at the end of the greeting to indicate the tape was full. We reasoned that the line was still ringing anyway, so we kept at it for another month or so. Eventually, we got the disconnected warning when we made one of our regular checkups. I'm sure he just changed the number. I like to think about that guy answering the phone after a few days of silence when we started it up. I can vividly imagine his response at the "Did someone page me to this number?" as he slams the phone down and then it rings again a few seconds later. Or, of course, coming home from work and having an answering machine full of random people asking about being paged. And yeah, we annoyed several thousand people into calling this guy by the end, but each of those people were only put out for a single call. A cost, yes, but a necessary one for justice. So let me ask you guys, considering this guy committed to buying the RX-7 and completely ruined OP's friend's chances of selling the car in a timely manner, do you think that the revenge OP and their friend did was over the top for how long they did it, or was it deserving for this guy? Should they have only done it for a couple of nights, not at all, or was the whole month that they did go at it justifiable? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by American Dreamer, a Poopy Jackson Pollock. For context, I have lived in my neighborhood going on 14 years now. When we first moved in, the place was a complete and utter dump. Original windows, 50 years old at the time. Old roof, very dated on the inside. Most of the lawn was mud. Over the years, we have turned it around to one of the nicest homes in the entire neighborhood. The yard is now nearly immaculate. My folks always instilled in me to take pride in where I live. So on a night in the not too distant past, I am laid back in my easy chair, which is right next to the picture window in the living room. It is around midnight and I am thinking I am going to get up, go outside and have a cigarette before bed. Before I can stand, I see brake lights in my peripherals. I begin to stand and then I hear screeching of tires. As I am popping out the front door, an old early 80s white Chevy crapbox truck pulls out of my driveway and starts tearing down the street, leaving mud tracks and a trail of debris. He abruptly stops about 6 houses down, jumps out, slams the truck door, makes a beeline to the front door, and goes in, slamming the door behind him. I then notice the debris and mud tracks out in the road. I look over to the driveway and apparently in turning around, he had went off the side of the driveway with his wheels. He had spun tires in the yard, leaving a trench about 5 feet long and a foot deep. I was absolutely livid. After a couple of deep breaths and a moment to gather myself, I decided that going down there to confront him would not end well. I was shaking mad and the damage was not so severe that I couldn't fix it. It was just not worth ending up in a fight or going to jail over it. So I came back inside and stewed. And stewed some more. Revenge of some sort had to be dealt. This a-hole had knowingly trashed my lawn and was such a common SOB that he didn't even acknowledge it or apologize. Then I had my eureka moment. Earlier in the day, I had mowed the lawn. Before I mowed the backyard, I had to poop scoop it. This is my weekly ritual as I have 2 big fatty spaniels that both crap like grown butt men. When I finished, I had a plastic grocery bag that was 3/4 of the way full, which I had put in the trash bin. I grabbed a pair of rubber gloves from the bathroom and went outside and retrieved the fermenting bag of feces. I then made my way down the street to take care of business. It was now around an hour after the incident occurred. I was fully prepared to be caught in the act and a fight ensuing. I started putting on the rubber gloves as I approached. All the lights in the house were out. I was golden. I approached the driver's side door, which was directly under the street lamp. I looked in the bag and selected the juiciest, fattest turd sitting on top and proceeded to smush it under the door handle. I reached in the bag again and grabbed a handful of foulness and smushed some more all over the mirror. I kind of started gagging at this point. I then proceeded to circle the truck, smearing, swirling, and slinging crap every which way but loose. As I had come full circle around the truck, the bag was getting low, so I proceeded to turn it inside out and wipe the remainder all over the windshield. I tossed the bag in the bed of the truck and then pulled off the gloves and tossed them in as well. I stepped back and admired my work. I only wish there had been more light for a picture. You literally could not tell the truck had been a white truck. It looked like a Poopy Jackson Pollock. A cornucopia of browns, orange, and mustard colors. A total masterpiece. Thoroughly pleased with my handiwork, I walked back to the house where I proceeded to shower and go to bed. I slept like a baby. Little did I know, the best was yet to come. The alarm went off at 8 a.m. I got up and started with my morning routine, not really giving the evening before a second thought. By 8:30, I went out to the front porch for my first cigarette of the day. I glanced down the street and saw the Poopy Pollock in all its glory, glimmering in the morning sun. I came back inside and sat in my easy chair to start working on my books for my business. Around 10 minutes till 9, I hear a guttural, ululant cry from the street. It honestly startled me. I hopped up and went to the door. As I stepped out onto the porch, I see that Tickhead has discovered my masterpiece. He was flat out coming unglued. Screaming, a lawn chair was thrown. His wife/girlfriend came out about that time, and when she saw what happened, she started losing her crap. I proceeded to have a seat and enjoy the show. He hooked up his nose and proceeded to try to spray it off. She went back in the house and grabbed a mop of all things. She starts to try to wipe the poop off with a mop. Halfway through, they start bickering. Then the shouting started back. Jerkhead didn't have time for this. He was going to be late for work. He walked back inside, but then came right back out heading for the truck. When he went to open the door to get in, he stopped for just a split second. He then went into a psychotic tantrum. Apparently, he had failed to spray the handle off well enough and ended up with a handful of dog poop. At that point, I had to go inside as I could not contain myself. I hope I ruined his day. I know he sure made mine. Honestly, considering it happened overnight and it's very obvious that your yard got ruined, it's kind of surprising to hear that they didn't accuse OP of doing anything fishy, especially if OP was outside during the commotion. But of course, they might not have noticed OP being outside, and I assume they're just not the brightest. Our next story is by Fred's Red, Petty Revenge on My Skydiving Instructor at 7,000 feet high. This happened in 2016 when I went tandem skydiving, but to tell the story, I need to give a bit of backstory. When I was 17, the end of 2007, I suffered a spinal cord injury and I'm now an incomplete quadriplegic. 2008 and 2009 were difficult as I had to learn to adjust to my life in a wheelchair. Having my dad with me made this so much easier, but near the end of 2009, tragedy struck again when my dad died in a plane crash. The following 7 years consisted of me having to deal with his death and learning to live more independently. That's its own story, so I'll get to the point. My injury was so severe that, medically speaking, I shouldn't be able to move anything from the neck down, let alone have the mental ability to communicate or even type this out. My diagnosis was incorrect and I've gone well above what the doctors thought my physical and mental capabilities should be. I have mostly full use of my upper body and some use of my lower body. I am very stubborn, so if someone tells me I can't do something, I'll go out of my way to prove them wrong. This being part of the reason why I wanted to go skydiving, to prove to myself and to others that I can do it. Convincing my doctor to give me medical clearance to this was a big effort, but eventually she did. And then the day came. It was a week before Christmas in 2016, I was 26, and me and my brother were staying with family near the beach. I convinced my brother and our cousin to do it with me. My brother only agreed to do it because I was doing it. He's scared of heights. We went to the skydive building, which was at a small domestic airport next to the beach. We got harnessed up, got onto the plane, and began the 20-minute plane ride to get to 14,000 feet. Throughout the entire plane ride, my instructor was trying to freak me out by saying things like, "Ooh, look how high we are," and "Are you scared yet? It's a long way down." But none of this was getting to me. I wasn't nervous, but excited. When we were at 7,000 feet, the jump instructor started to harness us to them. My jump instructor was behind me, and my brother and cousin and their instructors were in front of me. My instructor leaned forward and said, "How are you doing? Scared yet?" What I said in return was quite mean, but he sort of deserved it for attempting to freak me out. Yeah, I'm doing good, but now's probably not the best time to tell you that my dad died in a plane crash. I couldn't see his face, but I could feel his entire body go rigid behind me. My cousin was trying to hold back laughter, so I'm assuming he had a look of shock on his face. He stammered, oh, before I turned to look at him and say with a cheeky smile on my face, "You deserve that." He relaxed and laughed about it, then continued to attach my harness to his. The jump from 14,000 feet was incredible and I'm so glad I did it. But looking back on it now, I probably shouldn't have said that to the poor guy. But in the moment, I felt it was deserved. Well, to be fair, if they're in the moment trying to rattle you, it's pretty justified for you to try and rattle them back. Even though theirs was a bit of, "I'm experienced, you're not, are you scared about jumping out of a plane at 14,000 feet? And OP's was more, "Well, now that you ask if I'm scared being in this plane, I do have trauma associated with this very act." It's definitely a little different severity, but it was all done in good intention. And our final story of the day is by Affectionate C224. Oops, did I drop those drinks? How silly of me. This story isn't mine, but my mom's. When I first started working in service industry, she told me this story from when she was a waitress. I don't know when this happened, at a guess about 30 to 40 years ago. Another waitress had spoken to my mom and asked if she could cover her table because one of the men kept touching her when she went over. My mom ended up serving the drinks to that table and stood by the guy. As predicted, the guy grabbed my mom and in shock, she dropped the drinks and said, "I'm so sorry, sir. I was so shocked when you grabbed my butt that I lost balance." His wife started apologizing to my mom and screaming at him. Needless to say, he was very embarrassed. This is the kind of scenario where accidentally pouring the drinks on them isn't enough. You want to hear that they dropped a whole full pitcher on top of them, and you want to hear that they brought it all out on a tray and that tray accidentally fell and hit the guy in the head too. Sorry, sir, innocent accident. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So if you have a favorite story of the day, let me know which story and why in the comments down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like, and if you haven't, subscribe and turn notifications on so you'll never miss an upcoming video. No matter what you do, whether it's just viewing the video, liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, I appreciate the heck out of it. Every little thing that you do helps the channel grow that much more, and I can't thank you enough for it. So until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll be right here next time on the Storytime channel.